Okay, we'll resume our business in the Senate Subcommittee on Higher Education. At this time, the chair will call Donna Cornell and Brooks Moore. Hi. We'll start with you, Ms.
Start with
Cornell.
me?
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
My name is Donna Cornell. I'm the Vice Chancellor, Vice President for Legal Affairs at the University of Houston. I've been in this role since June of 2002. I also represented the various university systems in Texas at the Attorney General's Office as Deputy Chief of Litigation.
Okay, great.
I would say generally tenure is defined at the University of Houston system as a right to continuous employment awarded by the Chancellor upon authority delegated by our board upon recommendation of the presidents of each institution. The genesis of tenure is really to protect academic freedom, which I think we heard about earlier today, free inquiry, free expression, open dissent. It works both ways. It protects those on both sides of the equation that we find ourselves today. It's typically awarded based on research and scholarship, teaching and instruction, and service excellence, consistent with the mission of each of our universities, and with showing a high degree of confidence in the continuation of an enhancement of this performance. It's really just a contract in reality. It's not much different than that. From a public employer standpoint, that really means we don't deal with breach of contracts. It means we have to ensure we do not deny people their property rights without due process. And in that way, I would say it is incorrect in my experience to say that we do not have tenure revocation proceedings. I have personally been involved in them at the University of Houston system. I have also was involved in them in a litigation aspect at the Attorney General's office across the state. Tenure can be revoked for cause, for financial exigency, elimination of programs, medical reasons, retirement or resignation, and frankly, also for job abandonment. Tenure is specific to a component and doesn't mean and it does not apply to administrative positions. It doesn't mean you have a right to teach a particular class. It just means you have tenure in that particular department. Some experienced faculty can be hired with tenure, but typically, as you heard, it is a 7-year process. There are different processes through that 7-year process for revocation if you were going to seek to terminate even that process earlier. And I will say unequivocally that happens as well. Tenure is an important part of the accreditation process that we receive for each of the universities in Texas and really across our region of the country through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. They look at each campus and tenure, and they look at that tenure. Accreditation is important in large part for lots of reasons, but also for the receipt of our Title IV funds that our students get for financial aid. As you heard, it is an issue from our faculty's point of view, and I heard this as late as yesterday for recruitment and retention. And it's also not just an issue that faculty look at, it is also something that is important to our graduate students. In terms of separation, the dismissal for adequate cause would go through a process that is highly involved with our faculty, but goes up to the board. We do annual evaluations for our faculty. We also have a process for post-tenure review for our non-productive faculty. That is a policy that our board actually approves. We recently revised all of those policies, in large part anticipating some of this discussion that you have heard today. And post-tenure review does and can lead to a for-cause dismissal if the faculty members are not successful in resolving those issues.
Do you have any numbers on the number of revocations that have taken place
Since I've been there?
Yes.
You know, I can tell you how many we've had that have gone all the way up to the board, which is a very unusual situation. I think we've had 4 since I've been there.
Explain those intervals for me as far as all the way up to the board.
So typically, when you see if a faculty member is being looked at for failure to perform, you would start at the chair level. The faculty and the chair would look at the faculty in that department, and the chair would evaluate that faculty member. There would be a recommendation that would go up through the dean and then to the provost to proceed with revocation. Typically, that's going to be the time when you would find a faculty member kind of getting the realization that the road ahead does not look good. Mm-hmm. And so it's at that level where we would typically see a faculty member, frankly, resign. And that is the beginning of the tenure revocation process. For it to go all the way up to a board and actually a hearing at the board level is incredibly unusual. It's a pretty embarrassing fact. I mean, you could go back and I could show you on our website when we have had to do that all the way up to the board. It's not a very pretty picture, but it is something that we do.
What would just hypothetically, what would some examples of cause be?
Would be failure to perform. I would say typically it's in the teaching realm. Mm-hmm. When you see faculty members just not being able to teach effectively any longer, it can relate to their research, and it could relate to service. It's usually a compilation of all 3 of those, but I would say the genesis typically, in my experience, is really on the teaching side.
So does that tie to action and inaction as far as lack of performance, even though teaching and
absolutely.
Research is
absolutely.
Advancing forward? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other types of cause? Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, failure to report sexual misconduct.
Okay.
That would be one.
Right.
We're required to do
and
that.
I'm not speaking for your institution. I'm
sure.
just as an invited witness. I'm just asking nationally, even statewide, what would universities be highly concerned about as examples?
They would be concerned about not being able to teach effectively. They would be concerned, especially for our faculty who are more research productive or should be more research productive, because that's their area of expertise, and they were really hired with that expectation in mind. The failure to have any active research grants would be something that I think could lead to tenure revocation proceedings.
We talked about earlier return on investment, just what is invested in our tenured track or tenured professors at the research level, and then what's the return. You always have to look at that if you're measuring performance and just policies that work and don't work. Mm-hmm. How is that assessed at the university level, a true return on
Typically that would be done, I mean, what our chancellor would do would be look at reports from our division of research, our vice president of research, in addition to the provost would be looking at, what are our research expenditures looking like? Typically, that's what you're looking at more importantly. Yes, there are grants and other research, but typically you're looking at federal expenditures, money we get back from the feds to support that research. But those are numbers, if you had met my chancellor, you would know she pays attention to a lot of those details. And I would say that's typical for a research university.
Are there any other incentives to provide professors without tenure incentive to perform based on more research or more accomplished research
For those that are not tenured,
within the university?
we have a lot of research faculty that are not tenured.
You probably, what, 80-20, 70-30 overall on tenure, or no, is that off?
I'd have to get that figure, which I'm happy to do for you. I just could not tell you what it is. I
Okay.
sit here.
Go ahead. I jumped in on that
That's
first
okay.
question. For non-tenured professors, are there incentives, other economic incentives for them to produce and perform?
Sure, I mean, they would, they absolutely would get raises along the way like any typical employee would. They get evaluated annually and, they may or may not get a merit raise. I mean, that's the process. On all faculty, as you probably know, only get raises based on merit. So,
And are those true, are those contractual arrangements ahead of time, or are they understood by the professor if performance hits certain levels, or is it just an award by the institution as it's deemed to be deserved?
we don't typically put that level of detail in a contract.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Creighton.
And before you begin, I
yes.
wanted to have a clerk recognize Senator King as present. And since this is my bill, Senator King, I may pass the gavel to you. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Okay. Chairman Creighton, Senator King. I'm Brooks Moore. I'm the Deputy General Counsel with the Texas A&M University System Office of General Counsel, and I'm speaking on the bill. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the tenure policy we have in the Texas A&M University System. So my plan is to give a quick overview of that and focus on the dismissal processes and the performance evaluation processes as well. So in terms of the Texas A&M System's tenure policy, the goal is to balance academic freedom faculty members with their academic responsibility they owe to the institution. So, tenure for them, they have a responsibility to the institution, and they do have some academic freedom that goes with that. Tenure is defined as an entitlement to continued employment in the faculty member's academic position unless dismissed for good cause. So with good cause, they can be dismissed.
What's defined as good cause?
Good cause under our policy relates directly to their performance of duties. It typically is either performance or a conduct issue. A serious performance issue where they are not accomplishing their duties, failure to perform duties, professional incompetence, things of that sort. Over to, on the conduct side, violations of laws that are substantially related to their duties, violations of our policies, sexual harassment. That is cause specifically in our policy. But any violation.
If the legislature had passed a mandate on something that, with regard to what could be taught or not taught, that it would be considered good cause if they didn't align with that?
Certainly, if there was a state law that had a requirement in it and they didn't follow that, and it is a policy in the system to follow law, of course. So, yes, that could be cause. In terms of how tenure is granted, it is granted by the board only, by the recommendation of the institution's president, concurrence of the chancellor. And tenure track faculty go through a probationary period, as Donna and others had mentioned. It's up to 7 years, and then tenure would be proposed by the department up to the college. The college would propose it to the provost, up to the president, chancellor, and board. So it goes through a lot of levels to get there. But there is an annual evaluation of these tenure track faculty, and if they're not making sufficient progress, they will be non-renewed, and they will be gone at that point. So they don't wait until 7 years to say yay or nay. When they get to the 4-year point, they are given a more comprehensive review, and if they're not making adequate progress along the way, then they're shown the door at that point. Or if they go past that, then they're deemed to be making good progress, and the hope would be that they would make it through the process at that point. So the tenure review process, it's a rigorous review of their teaching, research, and service according to the departmental standards, the college standards, and the university standards. It would be very much related to their academic discipline. So mechanical engineering would have different standards than a biology professor, and they would have different standards than a professor in the College of Business. It depends on specifically what they're teaching in terms of, you know, what the metrics should be on the level of research, the type of scholarly publications, and so forth. So that's kind of what's looked at, and then it ends up going up to the Board of Regents. In terms of dismissal, we've talked about what good cause is. We have two types of dismissal processes: a regular dismissal, where there is a notice of dismissal given to the faculty member, and they get to have a hearing before they're actually dismissed. They have a hearing in front of a committee that has academic expertise, typically faculty on it, who make a judgment if there's good cause or not. The president can go with their recommendation or not. The president could say, well, you know, they say there's not good cause, I say there is, and then the appeal is final with our chancellor. And when the chancellor decides that there is good cause, employment would end at that point. With summary dismissal, under our policies, if there's been a case of serious misconduct substantiated by an investigation under our policy, and these would be cases of sexual harassment, research misconduct, fraud, violence in the workplace, things of that sort that are substantiated in investigation, we would
Go ahead, finish up.
we would propose summary dismissal in those cases. The faculty member in that case, the hearing would be after they're dismissed. So before they're dismissed, they would be notified of the intent to summarily dismiss. They would be able to give their side of the story to a designated administrator, see the evidence against them. If that administrator moves forward, their job ends at that point, and they have the opportunity for the full hearing process afterwards. But at that point, they're no longer an employee. So the benefit of that is that if it's one of these serious cases, we can get them off campus and they won't be an employee while they go through the appeals.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if you could just explain further the summary dismissal that you have in your
Okay.
policies.
Mhm.
It seems to stand apart from other institutions, the way that sits within your policies and the way it's used. And I would just guess, but you have had revocation of tenure in the last 10 years as an example.
We
Correct?
have.
Yeah.
Under the regular for-cause dismissal and then also summary as well.
Yeah.
So-
It seems like in reading what your policies are currently at A&M, it just seems like that would make sense that you have had revocation examples, that it hasn't just been taking it all the way to the line through several gateways, and then there's just somehow, some way, either resolution or resignation. But go ahead, tell me about.
Yes, we
summary dismissal.
have. I think on the summary side, we've had cases where there's a confirmed finding of sexual harassment or some violation of civil rights, discrimination on the basis of race, sex, what have you. There have been summary dismissals on those. In those cases, we've had cases of serious policy violations, such as failure to disclose ties to a foreign government or something like that, that violates federal requirements and our policies as well. Those have been the main cases. Sexual harassment, I think there have been a handful of those. And then, anyway, and also I believe we may have had one, I'm not sure what the current status is, that had some kind of fraud, embezzlement type of issues. And I know that case moved very quickly because there was a good investigation that had substantiated the financial irregularities. So I guess the point is, under our policies, there's strong accountability.
Ever any on falsification of academic credentials?
I'm sure we've dealt with that as well. Yes, sir, that would be cause, and that would definitely be dealt with.
Any on failure to complete a post-tenure review?
Possibly so, but I will say that normally when we have late career faculty, usually they resign if they no longer want to work to get through the development plan.
Right.
That's the more common case. So I don't know if we've had one of those in many years.
How do you, where is the intersection between the sort of the campus domain of the public square on campus and free speech protections, and where that intersects with damage to the flagship. So, we always think of students, we think of administrators, we think of professors, we think of alumni, many different categories of how a campus may touch an individual in their lives. But we also have little boys and little girls all over Texas that may never have an opportunity to attend a Texas A&M or a University of Houston. They just dream of it, but they own a piece of it in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them, as they try to achieve what's necessary to get to one of your two respective institutions, and the brand is attacked, tarnished, or damaged with a stigma that you can't outrun, just in that consideration of free speech and how it intersects with free speech and academic freedom and the protections under tenure and how it intersects with exactly that, the brand.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think the issue would be, where is this person speaking? What's the context? Is this what they're saying in the classroom? Is this in an academic publication? Is this service on a committee within the university family, or is this something they're doing out in the world on social media on their own time? So
Because at that point, where they're speaking matters because who's listening matters.
Well, what their rights are.
The promotion of either of those hypotheticals further beyond those walls or those pages still damages the brand, right?
I mean, potentially so, but under the First Amendment, I mean, if they're speaking as a private citizen,
Right.
That's not part of their job, and they're going to have the same First Amendment rights anybody
Sure.
else would.
Sure. That's why I
so-
was asking about that balance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I think the interesting thing in the classroom would be, is what they're talking about, what they're teaching, does it relate to the course they're teaching? In other words, if this is a mathematics course and they're talking about politics and, strident political statements, does that have any relationship to what they're supposed to be teaching? That might be speech that's not protected. But on the other hand, if they're teaching a political science class, the dialogue is probably going to deal with those topics. So, like a good lawyer answer, it depends. But it really does. It depends on what they're teaching, where they're speaking. The context matters greatly.
And who's judge and jury on that?
Well, as the employer, the university would be. And we better get it right, because if we don't, we could have liability for violating the First Amendment.
You have in A&M's policies mentioned as examples for cause, for dismissal, violation of system policies under that category. It's very broad.
It is.
But is it found within system policies protections for the flagship and for the brand, and how that may have to be balanced against free speech and academic freedom overall,
Well, I will say that
or following state law, for instance?
correct. I mean, all of those are required by policy. We have strong ethics policies and ethics laws that apply to state employees. So a violation of that would be could be cause. And certainly, when you hear examples about things like someone advocating for a political party or political candidate, I mean, that's a violation of state law. To bring politics into the workplace or the classroom, that's something that a state employee is prohibited from doing. So there would be discipline for that, for sure. So anyway, it does depend on context greatly.
Of course.
But if it's something that is inappropriate for a state employee, we would be able to discipline and potentially dismiss for that if it was severe enough.
What are the due process protections found in the summary dismissal policies that you have in place?
So there's really, there's a notice of the intent to summarily dismiss, and with that notice, the faculty member would be given a list of what the charges are, why they're being dismissed. They would have the opportunity to examine the evidence against them, and then they would get to tell their side of the story to that designated administrator prior to being dismissed. So they get that level of due process beforehand, and then if they were dismissed at that point, they would get to have the full hearing in front of the academic committee, who makes a judgment on whether there was cause, and they would get the appeal after that to the president and chancellor. So they get lots and lots of process, and that hearing is, very much like a trial. It's full-blown due process. So they get, notice, the opportunity to give their side, then they get that full hearing afterwards, in addition to those other appellate steps. So there's a good amount of due process built in.
And so for just asking you both as a panel, I mean, we talked about earlier examples of the best universities in the world not offering tenure. Cambridge, Oxford, we talked about MD Anderson having teaching, research, patient care, many disciplines, many categories not offering tenure, where, sheiks and royalties send their daughters and grandmothers for the best care in the world. Why couldn't we just have the brightest minds at A&M and U of H design an employment contract with the right kind of money behind it that would just be impossible to turn down? And set aside tenure.
I mean, yeah, tenure is a contract. I mean, they're all contracts. I mean,
Exactly.
yes, we could design a contract that people would find incredibly appealing, and if their money is no object, obviously we could do a lot. But that's never been my experience, that money is no object, but
Well, it's just priority, right?
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
I appreciate testimony from both of you. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I had for this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one, and I guess it's for both the institutions. How many tenured staff how many total people that are in a full-time teaching position do you have? And then what percent of those are tenured?
Certainly the greater number of our faculty are non-tenured.
And-
But percentages I could not give you as I
So, I mean,
sit
is
here
it
right
like
now.
10% or 20%
No,
or
it's probably
50%?
more like 30 or 40% are tenured and the rest are not.
Okay, would it be the same at,
A third at Texas A&M and College Station, roughly a third are tenured.
so roughly how many people is that at both institutions that are tenured?
I couldn't say offhand. I believe the number of faculty is, between 1,500 and 2,000. I mean, so you could do the math, but I'm not sure. I would want to verify that number for you, but I believe that's the case.
What I'm kind of curious of is how many total people do you have that could be on a track for that? And then how many do you actually have that are tenured? And then how many have been,
Are not never going. We
Well,
have
no.
a whole group that are not ever going to be in the tenure track.
right, that'd be a great number to see too.
Sure.
But the biggest number I'm interested in is of those who are tenured over the last, call it 5 years, how many have actually been removed and have lost their position? Or lost their tenure, whatever the discipline would be. How many, I'm interested in, are they really being disciplined?
Right.
And are they actually getting the ultimate discipline? In other words, if there's a breach of their responsibilities,
Right.
are people actually losing their job for that?
But Senator, the only thing I would add is you would have to include those faculty who are convinced to resign in lieu of going through that full process, which is going to be a much greater number
Okay.
than the ones where we actually go through the full process.
All right, so I would trust you to bring me that little matrix or that little list of numbers and
We'll
kind of
provide
has
that.
some footnotes that explain that.
Sure.
That, yes, although 100 lost their job, 50 of them resigned because they knew they were about to lose their job. I'm just looking for some numbers to see. I mean, is it like, if you've got 10,000 employees and 3 get fired, that's one thing. If 300 are getting fired over, that says something more about the enforcement of rules and things and whether those rules are effective. And I'm just kind of trying to get the context. That makes sense? That makes sense, Chairman?
Sure.
And you may already have those numbers. I just don't.
No, it'd be helpful
Yeah.
for the
We'd be happy to
committee
provide
members
that.
as well that are not able to be present.
So I'm just, because you were explaining how the discipline process works, but I'm just wondering what actually happens. I know I was a cop for a long time. We had civil service, and you'd get disciplinary actions taken against you. And yes, some people resigned in lieu of getting fired,
Right.
so they didn't have that on their record. A lot of other people got a 10-day suspension or a 20-day suspension or demotion in rank or cut in pay or something like that. And in looking at that, I could always tell whether we're doing a good job of discipline because people do things wrong, or whether we're, and if, wow, nobody's been disciplined for this thing that happens, and I've seen that thing happen a lot of times, and all of a sudden I know that's not being dealt with. So that's kind of what I was interested in.
Sure,
So-
I know, I understand.
So,
And just quickly, for each institution, what is your post-tenure review cycle?
Well, we
Term.
do annual evaluations, and post-tenure review will come in typically for non-performance. So it could be triggered at any time. It could be triggered in year 2. It could be triggered in year 22. I mean, because we do annual evaluations, the post-tenure review is really designed to deal with situations, at least at UH system, to deal with when a faculty member is not performing in any of the ways that Brooks has described, to be very similar.
At any time that
And it
may
could
be
happen
triggered?
at any time.
Yeah. And then,
So we have annual evaluations, and if a faculty member gets an unsatisfactory rating in any area, they'd be put on a short-term development plan with benchmarks to return to performance. If they didn't meet those benchmarks, they could be put into a full post-tenure review process, or they might be dealt with at that point, depending on what the issues are. But then, let's say, the evaluations were good, there would still be a full-blown post-tenure evaluation every 6 years. So that'll happen no matter what, and it may happen sooner if there's a performance issue in the interim.
every 6 and could be shorter, depending
Correct.
on if
That's correct.
reason to question cause is discovered,
Yes,
and
sir.
that trigger mechanism kicks in.
That's correct.
At either institution, I mean, in some public universities in Texas, faculty are a part of the process for revocation.
They are.
So how do we not see that as some sort of a conflict?
Because typically it involves the expertise of the faculty in that discipline. We would include individuals that would have a knowledge of that discipline. I mean, certainly we would include people in the panel that are not part of that discipline to alleviate any concerns about conflict. If somebody were to raise a true, you're not going to hire somebody who's best, or you would not use somebody who are best friends with each other on that panel. I mean, you'll have to use good judgment when you set up the panel to make sure that it's not biased. But typically you're going to need some expertise.
So yes, there'd be many situations where expertise would be needed, but like falsification of academic credentials or sexual misconduct or moral turpitude,
Correct.
violation of state policies, conviction of a crime, those not necessarily, right?
Correct.
Okay.
No, you can, there are ways to expedite any of these processes depending on the particular situation.
It just seems
Especially
like faculty reviewing faculty for revocation of a precedent related to tenure revocation itself, which you're telling me it hasn't really happened in previous years so much as other outcomes have been the end result. That's the reason I asked, is faculty reviewing faculty just seems like there might be some breaks in the system on the way that review might be carried out, just to protect tenure overall.
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, the faculty that I know have a lot of integrity and want to do the right thing by the university and want to make sure that their department is as productive as it possibly can be. That has not been my experience, that they cover things up or try to slide somebody through. That's just not been my experience. And it's hard when you have so many people that know, especially in a public institution, so people know when folks are not doing what they should be doing. It's not one of those things that you can really hide. And I have confidence in the integrity of that system. I mean, it does involve administrators in the provost's office. It will involve somebody in the general counsel's office. I mean, there are a lot of different eyes that look at it, but it is clearly a faculty-driven process, and I haven't seen any reason to think that was not effective.
But some of these conduct issues related to professors have not extended beyond the institution itself or into the media. Is that fair?
Yes.
So sometimes faculty knows about it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's beyond the institution, sometimes it's not.
True.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate both of you as a panel and being here for us to share your expertise.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next panel would be Alan Liu, Anna Swartz, Andrea Gore, and Jeffrey Gardner. Got all four? Hey, we got all four. If you would, I'm sure you know the routine, but when you're called on, please state your name, who you represent, whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill. Also, the yellow light means you're halfway through. The red light means it's time to stop, and please do your best to be attentive to it. And who did we miss? Okay. Let me see. I'm sorry I don't know everybody's name. Mr. Liu? Okay. Anna Swartz? That's who we're missing. Anna Swartz, she had to leave? Okay, let's go down one more. Pat Heinzelman?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks.
Tell her we're sorry we missed her. Let's see, we'll start at, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, we'll start at my left, your right. And again, state your name, who you represent, whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Gardner. I oppose Senate Bill 18, and I'm representing my own perspective. I'm a resident of Huntsville, Texas, where my wife Lindsay and I are raising 3 amazing daughters, and where I'm a tenure-track assistant professor. My sustained success in teaching, research, and service has put me on a path to go up for tenure next spring. So it's probably of little surprise that I oppose this bill, which would deny me what I've been working toward. Again, I'm not speaking for my university. I am simply representing myself, but I'm confident that my story resonates with many other tenure-track faculty here in Texas. My central point today is this. Many excellent teachers and researchers are only looking to work in academic positions that offer the possibility of tenure. When I went on the job market as a PhD candidate from the University of Georgia, there were several desirable characteristics or wants that I looked for when deciding where I'd apply to. But there was only one must-have characteristic that I'd use to filter out positions. At the top of my list of want characteristics was to work here in Texas. My wife is from Texas, and here our daughters could grow up close to a big extended family, but as much as we wanted to come to Texas, neither geography nor many other wants were necessarily deal breakers. However, my one must-have was tenure. I would only apply to tenure-track positions. There are several reasons why, but foremost, I've wanted to feel assured that my research could not be potential grounds for termination. Thus, I viewed tenure not as a finish line, but as a safeguard marker to continue teaching and publishing research, even about topics, issues, and findings that we might disagree with. Fortunately, I was hired as a tenure-track faculty member at a fantastic university in Texas. I've worked hard for tenure over several years, and I've looked forward to submitting my tenure materials soon. Moreover, many of my early career decisions have been planned around this probationary tenure track. We want to be here. The continuance of tenure will keep my family here. Yet this bill has left my wife and I uncertain and frustrated about this uncertainty here in Texas. If we desire excellence in Texas higher education, attracting and retaining outstanding faculty and students, we must continue to offer tenure-track positions in our universities.
Thank you. If I could stop you right there. Mr. Chairman, do you prefer to let the entire panel speak before questions or do it one at a time?
The entire panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Andrea Gore, and I'm here as a private citizen of Texas, taking personal time off from my job as a professor of pharmacy at UT Austin. I am here to testify against SB 18. I teach hundreds of students each year in the classroom, and hundreds of undergraduate students have conducted research in my lab. I have tenure earned through hard work to become an outstanding teacher, researcher, and citizen. At UT, I've brought in $10 million in grant funding, and I expect another $7.5 million award within a month. It took years of research and failed experiments and eventually successes to be able to get to where I am today. And tenure allowed me to take the kind of risks that were needed to do the cutting-edge research and make discoveries to change our understanding of the developing brain. Although tenured, I am accountable to the state of Texas. I receive in-depth review each and every year. What will Texas look like under SB 18? It will have catastrophic and possibly unintended consequences that will reverberate across the state. Our students will be deprived of their best educators and researchers when faculty choose other universities for their careers. These will include faculty in healthcare professions, law, engineering, and business. And Texas universities will sink in the rankings and no longer be competitive with other states. Abolishing tenure will be disastrous to the state of Texas. Please vote against SB 18. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Please state your name and who you represent, and whether you're on or for or against the bill.
My name is Pat Heinzelman. Good afternoon. I am a professor at one of the regional universities in Texas. I'm also I'm a faculty at one of the regional universities, and I'm president of the Texas Faculty Association, which is a group of faculty from across the state in higher ed. I'm here today in both my capacity as a private citizen and on behalf of TFA to oppose Senate Bill 18. Tenure is the cornerstone of quality and rigor in our academic disciplines. Tenure-track professors must prove their value to their institutions by undergoing a rigorous process to prove their competency, work ethic, and their ability to produce work that can stand intense peer review. In the tenure process, professors are exhaustively judged as to whether they are actually qualified to continue in a career to which they have already committed years of their professional lives. When professors are in tenure, the result is a recognition that they are fit to pursue the advance of knowledge, explore new ideas, and engage in scholarship for the benefit of their students, their institutions, their disciplines, and all of us. The employment protections of tenure are hard-earned. They are designed not as some sort of arbitrary award, but as an important system structure to allow for the advance of long-term research, protected from the danger of being derailed by short-term interest. Tenure is not a blanket employment protection. In fact, Texas law requires that institutions adopt provisions that, quote, a faculty member be subject to the revocation of tenure or other disciplinary action if incompetency, neglect of duty, or other cause is determined to be present. Simply put, tenure does not protect professors who are not doing their jobs. Finally, TFA urges the subcommittee to consider the effect this bill would have on Texas's.
If I may stop you there. I think we got the point, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Liu?
Good afternoon, Chair Creighton and Chair King. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Alan Liu. I'm a policy counsel at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. I am also a proud resident of Dallas, Texas. I urge this committee to vote disfavorably for Senate Bill 18. Ending tenure would be harmful for all professors in Texas, but particularly harmful for Black professors. Ending tenure implicates academic freedom and creates doubt for professors who are experts in their fields. No longer would they teach the honest truth. Instead, they would be guided by the latest news from the political halls of Austin. And I heard earlier reference to towing the political line. That is what would happen if this bill passed. I heard also earlier that young scholars are currently being censored or self-censoring when they are tenure-tracked. And I think that the same thing would happen if tenure were removed, if not more self-censoring. That said, I think it's important to level set and speak about Senate Bill 18 within a wider context. We don't live in a vacuum, and neither does SB 18. Senate Bills 16 and 17 have also been introduced and should be viewed as a package. Senate Bill 16 will prohibit the teaching of CRT, but also nearly any course that relates to race, sex, gender identity, and so on. And now SB 18 would prohibit remove the protections of tenure for professors who teach these courses. And Senate Bill 17 would prohibit universities from creating an atmosphere that recognizes and is inclusive of all people. And so these bills in conjunction seek to create a new way of doing education here in Texas. It would prohibit professors and students from sitting on committees to search for university presidents. It would require the Board of Regents to approve hires for university deans and provosts. It would require the Board of Regents. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And appreciate that. And all future witnesses, if you would, to the best you can, try to restrict your testimony just to this bill. We want to hear from you on the others, but at the right time. Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions?
Yes, I was just going to ask, it's Professor Gardner, is that right?
Yes, but again, I want to emphasize
Yeah.
I'm speaking for myself.
Just
I have
out
to
of-
be very
out of-
careful.
Just out of
It's very
respect to what
topic,
you do.
yes.
I know you're here
Yes,
only
thank you.
representing
I appreciate
yourself.
that. Yes.
I'm a big fan of Sam and
Thank you.
Huntsville community overall, so I'm glad
We're happy to be in Huntsville, yeah.
you're here. Could you tell us a little bit about how you're working towards tenure and
Yes.
what accomplishments
Sure,
you personally made?
I don't want to pat myself too much on the back, but I'm pretty proud of the success I had so far. Thank you. So I've had to actively be engaged in publishing research. This means for me, I do a lot of ethnographic research. So I collect my own data, spending time in the field, doing interviews, and then writing about that work. So obviously in those publications, these have come out in different journal articles, also book chapters, also in different types of public engagement pieces. This is not only related to my topics of interest outside of university campuses, but also some publications related to pedagogy, what's going on in classrooms, what works effectively, what doesn't work effectively. So part of it's research. Other part is really based on my teaching effectiveness. I'm very proud of having very high teaching evaluations. Again, patting myself on the back.
I asked you to pat yourself on.
Oh, thank you. But I consistently receive, not only in terms of the numbers, the quantitative data we can see from students on my performance, but on qualitative feedback. I've had a lot of students commend me on saying that favorite professor, different comments that kind of speak to what I'm doing in the classroom, active, interactive type of activities in terms of learning. And then in terms of service, I participate in a lot of different committees on campus. These committees are not only within our department in terms of looking at success of what we're doing. I'm currently co-teaching with another faculty member a pedagogy workshop. We're learning different types of skills and trying to share those skills with other faculty members in our department. But then also on committees in the discipline outside of the university. I'm engaged in different committees. I've been on scholarship committees, awards committees, evaluating other types of scholarship based on my own expertise. And so it's been something that's sustained. I'm talking too much on this, but it's been something that's sustained, and it's taken a lot of work to get to where I'm at.
But you're in your testimony, you're not saying that only a tenured professor would be providing quality instruction or
No.
producing important research. That's not a point you're making.
No. The point I was trying to drive home. There's a lot of people that are
You're
doing
saying it's
fantastic
a
work.
must-have with where you were choosing to be.
For me, and I'm speaking for myself, but certainly this is what was a must-have for me. There was a lot of other wants. At the top of that was coming back to Texas, close to my wife's family. But even that was not the need. The need was tenure track positions. That's what I was looking for.
And no examples of professors that only produce cutting-edge research because they were tenured. No examples of that, right?
Do I know of other professors who are doing cutting
that
edge?
only achieved certain results just because they were tenured, right?
No.
It was beyond that. It was based on their own talent and their own performance.
If I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, I believe that outside of tenure, there's also fantastic contributions happening in academia. But in terms of, for me, again, attracting and retaining me in terms of thinking about what I desire in an occupation,
Yeah.
that's where the line is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah,
Sure.
I know you'd certainly stipulate that tenure or not, you're going to give your best and your all to produce everything you can produce for your profession and what you do day in and day out that makes your heart beat, right?
I'd say yes and no. Like if I want to qualify that a little bit, I wouldn't say it's like.
Lead you, so
Oh, sure.
tell me.
So the idea of like tenure or no, I'm doing my best. I will always do my best, but I can't assure everyone that would be in a position that's not tenure track. That's what I want. That's what I've worked for. That's what I will continue to work for. That's what I'm looking for in a career.
Thank you.
So I hope that was clear.
It is clear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, what do you teach, by the way?
I'm going to keep saying I'm only representing myself.
I know.
I teach sociology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So,
Dr. White's not going to worry that you're
I'm just,
here.
exactly. It's like I'm trying to be very careful.
Your
But
disclaimers have
but
been
yes, it's-
outstanding. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
it just one question, and anyone can answer it that's a professor, maybe y'all want to answer it, but, so, and again, Mr. Chairman, you may have laid this out before I came, and it may have been discussed, and I apologize for repeating something, I was just trying to get my hands around the whole deal. Because I've never worked for any place that I was in a position that I had a lot of protection there, at the level that you get with tenure. I'm curious, why can't the same thing be accomplished? I understand why you wouldn't want it that way, but cannot the same protections, the same financial, the same career goal aspirations, can those not, I mean, in the rest of the world, the high-tech world, the banking world, the business world, everywhere else, they're accomplished through contract. Can those not be accomplished also through individual personnel contracts with the various professors? I mean, can't you put everything that's in a tenure deal in a contract deal? Can't those be in there as well, and even more tailored for that particular person and their expertise and their potential and all that? Can't that just be put into a contract? I mean, if tenure didn't exist, I'm just saying, if it didn't exist, we're in a world where it never existed, wouldn't we be doing that on individual employment contracts to get the best people and give them the freedom to do the best things?
If I may.
Please, yeah, and I'm really just asking a very honest question.
I think there's two parts to this. One part is that tenure is special to academia because in academia, in higher education, we are trying to make discoveries, we're taking chances, we're doing the kind of research that might take 10 years or even 20 years. I recently talked about James Allison, who discovered immunotherapy and won the Nobel Prize. That probably took 20 years, and nobody believed him for a very long time. So if he didn't have protections at the time that he was doing this work, which, by the way, he's at MD Anderson now, but he did that work before he came to Texas. He was drawn to Texas because of the great cancer research. Nobody believed him, and he would not have been able to do that kind of research if he had not been in a position where his status had been protected. I feel the same thing happened to me with my own research because I pivoted my biomedical research program. I went in a new direction, and I think we made some really important discoveries, but it also took about 10 years. So I think tenure is a special need in higher education for those people who are working at the edge of discovery and who also may be challenging sort of the status quo. You need time, and you need to be able to disagree with other people if they're telling you that's not the way it works.
And you don't think
need
those
that
could be
requirement.
put in a contractual form? Because I always think of tenure as a contract.
Well, yes and no. So I think the other part of that is that the contracts just wouldn't be long enough. If you're talking about 10 years, I don't think people have 10-year contracts. But really, the other point that I wanted to make is that if we take tenure away in higher education in the state of Texas, we're not in a vacuum. It is going to be there at other places, in other states, in the private sector. And it's going to be the best faculty who are going to leave. The worst faculty will have a harder time finding other jobs, whether they're under a contract or however they're employed. But the best people will have opportunities. I am contacted all the time because, and I pat myself on the back, I'm contacted by places like Yale University, UC San Diego, University of Michigan, who ask me, am I interested in moving? And to this point, to this time, I've always said no, because I love it here in Austin and in Texas.
That happens in the private sector too, and then what happens is that employee goes back and says, hey, I got this great offer, and then you end up negotiating a better deal or you leave. But anyway, I was just curious. I understand what you're saying, that the uniqueness, but I'm just, it always seems to me like that actually gives the great professor more opportunity to go back and negotiate for a better deal than they have already.
Maybe, but it also gives us a reason to stay instead of giving us a reason to say, you know, they're not taking care of us here. We can't take those chances.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Chairman?
No, thank you.
Thank you, panel. Chair calls Derek, is it Chow? Derek Chow, Antonio Ingram, is Mr. Puente? Is it, okay. Jaime Puente and Alice Yee. I had to, there's a mark by it, that's the reason I was asking. Okay. All right, who do we have so I can figure out who we don't have?
Antonio Ingram.
Derek Chu.
All right. Why don't we go- Well, let's just do y'all. I'm going to call up the next group. Sir, you want to go ahead? Please state your name, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill, and please be attentive to the little lights over there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senators. My name is Derek Chu. I'm speaking for myself as a private citizen. I'm testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 18. I'm a tenured full professor in computer engineering at UT Austin, having rejoined in 2022. I was an assistant and associate professor with tenure at UT from 2005 to 2016. I'm also part-time computer architect at Microsoft. In 2010, I was invited to interview for a position at Microsoft that leveraged the underlying technologies I was using for my research at UT. Though the work was very interesting, the offer was significantly higher. I chose to remain at UT because I had tenure, enabling me to research ideas that were beyond what Microsoft was thinking at the time. In 2013, I was invited to interview again. I went to Microsoft to apply some of the ideas I'd stayed at UT to develop. I co-started a new project based in part on those ideas that are currently deployed in every Azure server. I also led one of the teams that brought the Bing work that was started before I arrived to production. Both projects used Altera FPGAs. Wired Magazine reported that Microsoft is why Intel acquired Altera for $16.7 billion, Intel's largest acquisition. I resigned my UT position to continue the work and stayed at Microsoft for over 9 years. Though the work is still fascinating and has tremendous impact, I wanted to look at new ideas that could not become commercial reality for at least 10 years. Tenure provided the ability to explore long-term, world-changing ideas without the worry of not being able to feed your family because management determined you didn't make sufficient progress in the previous year or just didn't like your work. Untenured faculty take on risk if they look that far into the future. I am now a full professor with tenure at UT Austin. If UT did not have tenure, I would not have applied to UT, even though I bleed orange and I love teaching at UT. Thus, my personal experience, along with recent discussions with faculty candidates and faculty from other universities, tells me that if SB 18 passes, we would have trouble recruiting and retaining the very best faculty, people I want to work with and I want teaching our Texan students. Why would the best commit to Texas if Texas won't commit to them, especially if other top universities will? Thank you.
Thank you, and great timing, sir.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Jaime Puente. Today, I am representing the Texas Legislative Education Equity Coalition. Got some testimony. And, one of the things I'd like to say is SB 18 is an assault on academic freedom and freedom of speech. And I think, we've heard some of that today from the opening panel.
And I'm sorry, you testifying against the bill?
Against the bill, against SB 18. Thank you, sir. And so one of the things I think we've heard today and has been we've heard the motivation for this bill is that some faculty members in state universities feel like they're being denigrated for their political beliefs. Well, I think the beauty of academic research and the beauty of our university systems and the tenure system is that it offers professors, it offers students, it offers universities the ability to pick the best ideas. And if professors are feeling their classes are being denigrated or not being taken, or their voices are being silenced because students don't want to take their class, well, that's because students don't want to take their class. Maybe they should think about what they're teaching or how they're teaching or what they're saying so that, maybe their ideas are privileged over others in the ways in which our, traditional academic systems work. If my ideas and my research are disproven or they are not up to the standards, up to academic standards as someone else, and someone else challenges me on that, then, rightfully so, my positions will be denigrated. People will not listen to me. That's what tenure is for. Tenure is for providing people the opportunity to challenge ideas and to challenge the dominant narratives of society. And SB 18 is going to prevent professors and prevent our universities from doing that. It's going to hurt our state over the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Creighton. My name is Antonio Ingram. I'm Assistant Counsel with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I'm here to testify against Senate Bill 18. A couple weeks ago, a federal appellate court affirmed a decision to preliminarily enjoin Florida's Stop Woke censorship law, a law designed to curtail academic freedom of professors in Florida. The federal district court's injunction, upheld by the federal appellate court, cited George Orwell and the seminal book 1984 in the opinion. The judge found, and I quote, "The law officially bans professors from expressing disfavored viewpoints in university classrooms while permitting unfettered expression of the opposite viewpoints. Defendants argue that under this act, professors enjoy academic freedom so long as they express only those viewpoints of which the state approves. This is positively dystopian. It should go without saying that if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. We are concerned that the effect of Senate Bill 18 will be very similar, especially on Black and Latinx professors who disproportionately teach courses that may not be within the state's purview as appropriate, especially given the context of these bills in a larger scheme. And we're afraid of this Orwellian sort of culture that may be produced. Again, tenure is not being attacked in a void. There have been comments that tenure is designed here to be abolished in order to respond to academics who are speaking in ways that are deemed to be not palatable to the leadership in Austin. And so we have grave concerns that this is going to really impact academic freedom, but specifically academic freedom for Black, Brown, Latinx, Asian American, and queer professors. This is academic freedom, but no one is really trying to fire the physicist professor. They're trying to fire the professors that teach women's studies, gender studies, Black history, Black studies. And we're gravely concerned about the discrimination that this bill will be unleashing onto higher education in Texas. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Well, yes, Mr. Ingram, you know, as I mentioned, different efforts going on state by state by state. From a bipartisan standpoint, including here, you don't feel like that both parties in all these states are going Orwellian, do you? I mean, certainly, you know, a review of tenure as a policy and also the definitions of sort of what would be found within just cause is a very valid discussion to have. Whether it's to change the policy, to revoke the policy, or just to show the public that we're vetting these conversations and what our institutions are doing on behalf of all in a way that's actually very balanced, very fair on behalf of all Texans.
So I can't speak to other states. I can speak to Texas.
Yeah.
And I will say that, as you know, the conversation around tenure, especially based on comments in the public record by the Lieutenant Governor, are about CRT. And it is about restricting discourse about race and gender sexuality. This is not a neutral sort of process that's happening out of a void. It's happening in a targeted way that's going to impact professors of color and the subjects that they teach.
So, yeah, I held hearings on tenure years before that. So,
Right, but as of
yeah.
last year,
You're just talking about political wins lately. Have you feeling that way? Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm saying that this is a priority of Lieutenant Governor, and the commentary that he said about these topics are not political wins. It's his opinion that has led to these being a priority on the Senate.
And what would you say to me holding hearings prior to the Lieutenant Governor establishing priorities on the same?
I'm saying that Senate Bill 18 happened after he made his priorities known.
Okay, yeah, we've been looking at tenure for years, so I think there's a complete miss of an opportunity to really look at impact if you just chalk it up to the easy layup on who's bringing something based on a political win. That's easy testimony, right? That's sort of, there's not a whole lot of depth in the thought process behind that or a review of this on behalf of the public if it's just the easy layup on a political jab. That's not, as the author, that's not why I'm bringing this forward. So I can tell you it has nothing to do with it now, and it hasn't had anything to do with it in the years that I've been working on it. So, and I would imagine from the bipartisan standpoint, state to state, there's a lot bigger picture going on there because it's not really related to the left or those communities that you mentioned. that
Well, you know,
were
the Legal
saying-
Defense Fund is nonpartisan.
Yeah.
We view discrimination can come from any political party. And so even though this may be bipartisan, it does not mean it will not impact professors of color in a deleterious way.
Got it. Well, I appreciate your testimony and being here. You're always very passionate. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before you go, just a quick question. I just want to say, I'm a little bit offended that you so narrowly prescribed the reasons for this bill. The chairman's reasons and any other one else on the committee or in the legislature that's considering it. Because it's a much broader question. It gets into how we manage employees, and this only applies to state universities, does not apply to private universities. And I just be honest, when people come in that narrowly with that narrow allegations and say, because you're discussing this bill or considering this bill or signed on to this bill, you're doing it for these reasons, when you haven't even come by and ever talked to me and asked me about it, I'll just be honest with you, that narrow of view is just frankly very offensive to me. You're a good man and you do a good job down here testifying for the legislature, but I think that testimony was over the top. And with that, the panel is dismissed. Thank you. Chair calls Lauren Shook, row 2, Brian Evans, and Joe Swoop. I butchered every one of those names. I just want to apologize. All right, who do we have? We're batting about 50%. Ma'am?
I'm Lauren Shook.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, and I butchered your name. I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
And so would you please, you've already told us your name, would you please tell us who you represent and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill?
Sure. So my name is Lauren Shook. I am testifying against the bill, and I'm representing myself. So I am a graduate of Texas A&M. I am a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin. And for what it's worth, I'm also a young scholar, and I study higher education policy. For whatever it's worth, I do think tenure as a system is not perfect. I think it's also pretty strange. It's confusing. It is very different from what we use in other fields. So I understand the confusion around that. However, I do oppose Senate Bill 18 because of what I believe are going to be the real impacts, and I will say also concerns about real intent. College presidents and different folks have been coming and telling y'all that this would really hurt Texas's ability to recruit and retain great faculty. The faculty bring in billions of dollars of research money. Texas A&M, my alma mater, it's the largest employer of Brazos County. This will not just hurt our institutions, it will also hurt our economy. And something that I want to address that has come up before is we do have some of the best institutions in the world, and that's unusual actually to have public universities be some of the best in the world. And the question of quality has come up quite a few times, and for better or for worse, quality is measured based on research, not on teaching. And so I believe teaching should be a part of that, but if we're talking about the rankings, if we're talking about the power of brand, we will hurt our institutions by taking away tenure because it will cause people to leave the state. I am someone who is deeply dedicated to the state of Texas. I want to be here. I want to stay here. I want to be a professor here.
Thank you. Sir.
My name is Brian Evans. I'm speaking for myself as a private citizen. I'm a tenured professor of engineering at UT Austin. I'm a member of the American Association of University Professors, or AAUP, and I also serve as a vice president of the Texas AAUP Conference.
Thank you. Sir, are you testifying on, for?
I'm testifying against Senate Bill 18.
I thought so, but we needed to hear it.
Over 800 colleges and universities adhere to academic freedom and tenure principles of the AAUP. Many of these are our competitors. Academic freedom is the freedom from censorship by the institution and the government in the professor's teaching, research, and expression. Tenure is a necessary safeguard or guarantee of academic freedom. Tenure allows professors to have full freedom to help students develop the critical thinking, knowledge, training, and professional networks needed for successful careers. Tenure protects professors in developing and disseminating new knowledge from all viewpoints, including conservative, moderate, liberal, and apolitical. Tenured professors take on long-term curriculum development, research projects, and leadership positions. Without tenure, public institutions of higher education in Texas would lose up to $5 billion a year in the current level of external research funding. Without tenure at public colleges, universities, and medical schools in Texas, the following four things would happen. Texas would lose its competitive advantage in recruiting scholars with a prospect of tenure in another state or country. Faculty and other scholars will leave for institutions in other states to protect academic freedom and tenure. It would be incredibly costly to pay Texas professors enough to work without tenure to be competitive with industry, and good students in Texas will go elsewhere to study, and good students in other states will avoid Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, panel. All right, where we at? Chair calls Brian Rowland, Angela Valenzuela, I gotta put my glasses on, that's understood. Emilio Zamora, and Missy Patterson. Any of those people here? All right, now we're batting 25%. Well, you have the whole floor.
Does that mean I get everybody else's time? I'm just kidding.
Can't go there.
I'm just kidding.
Good try, though. Can we get your name and who you represent, what you're testifying on for or against the bill?
Sure. My name is Missy Patterson. I'm representing Texas Community College Teachers Association as their president-elect, and I'm testifying against the bill. Thank you.
Proceed, please.
All right. So, I've been a faculty member for 28 years, and I've served in many roles, and I can tell you that faculty are not a monolith. We rarely agree on anything. However, as you've heard my colleagues today, we do agree on this.
I understand when that happens.
Yeah, it's true. TCCTA actually had a unanimous resolution passed on supporting academic freedom, and that's one of the reasons I felt empowered to speak to y'all today. We oppose SB 18 because we see tenure as a vital tool in protecting academic freedom. It's not just about protecting freedom of speech. Tenured faculty go through a rigorous process and then are rewarded with protections that they are afforded to enable them to freely continue the research, like you've heard others speak of. Tenure protects long arc research and innovations in teaching from shorter term effects of things like the political zeitgeist or premature termination before full value is achieved. I feel like SB 18 is a solution in search of a problem. Those who say tenure prevents accountability might be surprised to learn that SB 18 actually removes the accountability currently present in our legal code, which I think is a problem. TCCTA believes in faculty accountability and integrity, and we support it entirely. Tenure is not a guaranteed job for life, nor does TCCTA want it to be. I heard today a speaker say that stars don't care about tenure. I would suggest, and my colleagues at TCCTA suggest, that we don't all start out as stars. We need time to develop, and we need time that we're protected to do that development. We believe in lifelong education and believe that tenure is an important opportunity that supports excellence in education. TCCTA is grateful for cell phones and for the work of the legislature in supporting higher education. And that's my time. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
That
Chairman.
was distracting. Sorry.
You know it's happened to all of us. So could you just clarify something for me?
Sure.
Did the association resolution, did they pass a resolution specifically on SB 18?
No, this preceded SB 18 being filed. So this was about academic freedom.
Was it specifically on tenure?
No, I have a copy of the resolution that I'd be happy to leave with y'all, but it's basically saying that we would not stand for anything that tries to take apart academic freedom. So the resolution is in support of academic freedom and focuses on the idea
Does
that
it-
our accrediting boards require it.
Got it, right there. Does it
yeah.
mention tenure in it?
It's been a little bit since I've looked at it. I do not believe that we put tenure in there, but defending it as an essential element of effective teaching, and we believe that tenure is part of that support. And I'll just say, TCCTA is unique in that not all of our members have tenure, but we've been, polling people about this issue, and we are hearing support for
I
this.
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
So
sure.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right,
Believe
thanks
so.
so
Thank
much.
Chair calls David Albert, Karma Chavez, Ben Hugh, Wei Lee.
David Albert is teaching right now.
Okay,
Let's come back.
looks like we're still batting 25%,
Apparently.
you know? It's always the best that stay, right? Please
All right.
state your name and who you represent and if you're testifying on, for, or against the bill.
Sure. Thank you so much to the senators. My name is Karma Chavez, and I'm here testifying on behalf of myself. I'm testifying against SB 18. Also, though, wanted to mention that I am a professor at UT in Mexican American and Latino Studies, but I'm, as their colleague said, not speaking for them. I have many reasons for speaking against the bill, but I just want to focus on one main one here. If I understand, one of the rationales I've been hearing about abolishing tenure has to do with your concerns about faculty productivity. And I imagine you've heard anecdotes of like ancient professors wearing the same camel hair jackets they wore in the early 80s, who teach from the same yellowed notes they wrote 40 years ago and maybe are so far gone they don't even remember they have a research agenda. Don't get me wrong. In my 15 years as a university professor, I have known one of those, and we wanted him gone as much as you do. But that is a caricature of a professor, I would say, and an extreme outlier. Most faculty I know, regardless of whether they're tenured or on the tenure track, are incredibly hardworking. It is a demanding job. But one of the benefits of being tenured is that I have the opportunity to spend the time, and you've heard a lot about that. Because the longer I do this job, the more complex my research questions get and the more complex my research methodologies become. My last book, which came out in 2021, I started it in 2011. The work just takes time. Tenure gives us the opportunity to sift and winnow our way through the relevant sources and materials or do the experiments and surveys for the best possible results. Again, the work takes time. As a tenured professor, I may not publish as quickly as I once did, and I assure you it's not because I'm lazy, but it's because I'm doing even better work than before. The work takes time. In other words, higher ed is not like a business, and so tenure protects us to ensure that we won't be punished for a lack of productivity when we're doing the highest quality work we can. I urge you not to apply a set of principles to my workplace from another workplace that I simply think don't fit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
No questions, but appreciate your testimony, and you've been active this session during the hearings, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so
Any
much.
chance the camel hair blazer comes back? Or, throw in a pair of Chuck Taylors or some cool Adidas, or any way it comes back.
I mean, just go up north a little bit. I think you will find your fair share.
I'm holding out.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank
I
you.
have mine.
Chair calls Lamia Bahrenwala, Shamia Rizvi, Amanda Garcia, Maria Hunda. Wow, we got all four.
That's good.
Thank you for sticking around. Who wants to start? All right, you're gonna make me pick.
I'm
Ma'am,
happy to start since
Please.
you called my name first.
please state your name, who you represent, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill.
Good afternoon to everyone in the room. My name is Lamia Bahrainwala. You're all welcome to call me LB. I am an associate professor at Southwestern University. It's a private school. I am tenured. So on the surface, it would seem that this bill wouldn't affect me, but I'm here to speak against SB 18. Before I became a tenured professor, I was also an adjunct. You may be familiar with that term. It is professors who worked on a contract basis without health benefits on an as-needed basis by the institution. They're extraordinarily disempowered, and I believe that your bill seeks to protect the most disempowered faculty members. However, what I want to focus on here is how the removal of tenure will actually increase the adjunctification of universities. when we remove the few tenure track positions that are available, institutions will seek to recruit the most low-paid and the most precarious faculty members and invest far fewer resources into them because they do not have the protection of a tenure track job or the protections of tenure at the end of it. I have seen personally as an adjunct professor when I worked at St. Edward's University, which had over a 65% adjunct faculty body in their university, how veterans and first-generation students and non-traditional students who were caregivers who had returned to university could not get faculty to write them recommendation letters because the turnover was so high that they could not build relationships with those faculty members because those faculty members were so precarious. Tenure allows protections and time for faculty to develop the resources to support these students. I urge you, in addition to considering the precarity of faculty, to also consider the precarity of these students as well. Thanks.
You hurt my feelings. I used to teach adjunct. Ma'am?
Hello, my name is Samiha Rizvi. I am representing myself and I'm against SB 18. I'm also a fourth-year undergraduate student studying public health and social work at the
Ma'am, could you
University.
pull the microphone over to you? We want to make sure everybody gets to hear you.
Okay. Should I just continue from where I was?
yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
At social work at the University of Texas at Austin. During my first year at UT, I experienced difficulties adjusting to the academic rigor and social atmosphere. I would sit in the back of the classroom, and once class ended, I would immediately jump out of my seat and rush back to my apartment so I could be alone. After my first semester, I contemplated transferring to the university back home. However, I decided to give UT another shot. If it weren't for a particular professor in the School of Social Work, I don't think I would have continued my studies here. During my second semester, I enrolled in a class called How to Change the World, which this professor taught. This professor and the class she taught created a nurturing environment where I felt safe to express diverse ideas and opinions, and where intellectual diversity was not only accepted but celebrated. Being a tenured professor, she could lead us in thinking critically about social frameworks and how they formed the foundation for taking action to effect positive change in our society. She's a large reason why I am now pursuing a degree and career in social work. Tenured faculty not only have a commitment to their institutions, but they have a commitment to their students as well. For example, a study by Berger and Millam found that faculty tenure was positively associated with student retention in large research universities. Another study by SAV found that institutions with higher percentages of tenured faculty members had higher graduation rates. By taking away tenure, you are taking away our faculty's ability to properly support their students and serve as mentors, which is critical for their sense of belonging and academic success. This is unacceptable and unfair to the thousands and thousands of students attending, including paying to attend, public institutions in the state of Texas. As a student and supporter of our faculty and their rights, I ask you to vote no on SB 18. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Representatives. My name is Amanda Garcia. I'm an undergraduate student at UT Austin, testifying against SB 18 and representing myself. I'm a year away from graduating and will be forever grateful for the education I received at this institution, but I almost didn't come to UT. I had the option of attending Washington University in St. Louis, which is a private top 20 ranked institution. But when it came down to making my decision, I chose to come to Austin because I knew about the innovations made by faculty, researchers, and thus their students. Right now, Texas is ranked 34th out of 50 for higher education. And the reason why we're not further down on that ranking and the reason why UT, A&M, and other amazing Texas schools are world-renowned despite this ranking is because of our professors. Our tenured faculty are what makes our university so competitive and consistently ranked among world institutions. And it is their protected exploration of thought, science, and technology that progresses our society forward. Further, the economic impact of removing tenure would be devastating. Texas universities will have to compete with out-of-state universities. It becomes more expensive to recruit and retain the best professors because they'll want to work for a university. They'll be able to guarantee their job, pay, and prestige. There's a tremendous loss to knowledge when universities are treated like businesses instead of as institutions of innovation, because faculty are not just employees, but experts dedicated to their work and dedicated to their students. If you want the best of the best to come to Texas and stay in Texas, you have to keep tenure. Our public higher education institutions will experience the worst brain drain we've ever seen if the rest of these other anti-academic freedom bills are not already pushing them away. A true, well-rounded curriculum is one that protects diversity of thought, even if all these thoughts are disagreeable, and that is true intellectual diversity. So again, I urge you to vote against SB 18. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria del Carmen Unda. I am a doctoral candidate here at the University of Texas at Austin. My research and my dissertation is focusing on K-12 public school system. I am also a Gates Millennium Scholar. I came here from UCLA as a public policy scholar. And so, yeah, for the last 10 years of my life, as young as I look, I actually have been in this industry for the last decade. I have been working tirelessly up to 60 to 100 hours a week to be able to graduate from a doctoral program to be able to apply for a job for a 10-year position. It's super competitive. It's a very high demanding job, and I have sacrificed so much in my life as a young scholar to be able to apply for a 10-year position, and now it's getting dismantled, and it feels like I've just wasted the last decade of my life to something that I just feel like it's not going to be. I want the university and institutions, I know my value, my worth, and I would like to have a position as a 10-year faculty professor, and I am on track for that. And I have interviewed at multiple Ivy Leagues, but I want to stay in Texas, and so please support my research and my knowledge production as a young scholar. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, any questions?
I don't believe so.
Thank you, panel. And I believe that's all we have as listed witnesses. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 18? You were waving at the back. I guess that did mean you were wanting.
Oh, no, that's my friend.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. With that, Mr. Chairman, do we have a sub? Don't have a sub, so with that, Senate Bill 18 remain pending?
I'm going to leave it pending.
Subject to call of the chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Senator King. Okay, at this time the chair lays out Senate Joint Resolution 81 by Senator Birdwell and recognizes Senator Birdwell to explain the measure.
Before I lay it out, Mr. Chairman, one trivia question. Of the 7 university systems in the state of Texas, guess which one does not have tenure?
I can only imagine which one. you're gonna
TSTC, and it's the best deal going in
mention. Texas State Technical College.
Hooah! Members.
What Senate district is TSTC?
It's across many districts, but it's headquartered in Senate District 22, and remember, you can't catch 22, so.
Connected with the softball I threw to you. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, SGR 81 establishes a constitutionally dedicated permanent endowment to fund the capital infrastructure needs of career and technology education programs offered by the Texas State Technical College system. TSTC has no consistently adequate capital funding to allow for strategic growth in current or new campuses. Currently, TSTC does not have a reliable source for capital funding with the Higher Education Fund capped at 2.2%, nor does it have taxing authority, and nor are we asking for that. And the education and general space support formula is not congruent with technical training needs. Currently, TSTC has 6 campus administrations operating 10 locations throughout the state of Texas. With the record growth of employment rates in Texas, the skilled labor shortage also continues to grow. Texas State Technical College has a long history of proven performance in training highly skilled workers, and this is why a large group of associations and businesses have been pushing for the expansion of TSTC into the fastest growing regions of Texas for access to training facilities that produce the skilled workforce needed. Should this SGR affirmatively pass, the Technical Institution Infrastructure Fund and the Available Workforce Education Fund will be established as special funds in the State Treasury for the purpose of providing funding for capital projects and equipment purchases relating to career and technology education programs offered by TSTC. The Comptroller will transfer a one-time amount of $750 million of the surplus balance to establish the Technical Institution Infrastructure Fund. The TSTC Board of Regents will administer the fund, which will be invested in the same manner and according to the same standards provided for investment of the Permanent University Fund. And Mr. Chairman, we do have a resource witness from the Comptroller, and I would ask the committee's favorable consideration.
Appreciate that, Senator Birdwell. No questions, I don't believe, from the panel. Chair will open up public testimony on SJR 81, and the chair will call J.D. Hale, Mike Reeser, Mike Maroney, Tony Bennett. Very distinguished panel.
And then there's me.
You were included in that.
And I think JD got hung up on a different.
Okay, got it. If Mr. Hale is not here, Ms. Spillman, Annie Spillman, are you? Much more. Much more. Chancellor, we can start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Mike Reeser, and I serve Texas as the Chancellor of the TSTC system. It's an honor to appear in front of you today and speak on this joint resolution. I would like to make reference to some printed material that we handed out to the dais. You may want to look through that as my remarks go. I will try to avoid repeating what Senator Birdwell had provided in his laying out of the bill, and just build some context to his remarks if I could. It was back during the Great Recession when the Senate Finance Committee first challenged every institution in Texas to consider an outcomes-based funding method. And it was TSTC who said yes. And for the next few years, we worked with players like the Comptroller's Office and the LBB staff and the the co-board and others to develop a outcomes-based approach that was perfect for your workforce college. And it's one that's based on placement in a job. And the more our graduates earn, the more money indicated in that formula. So we're paid on commission. That did a transformative impact on our system. And I could talk for hours about those many things, but I want to point to two. The first is, as you would imagine, when the state started paying for outcomes, our outcomes began to soar. And today, compared to then, we produced last year twice as many placements as we did when this formula first began. And the amount of money that those students start with in those jobs grew at an even faster rate. And so the state of Texas is getting a far bigger impact today than they were before because you switched us to an outcomes-based formula. The second thing that it taught us, which is really critical, is that it's the industrial employers of Texas who are a customer of ours that is every bit as important as the students who study with us. Because when we start with their workforce needs in mind and then engineer backwards into the various program offerings we have, we know there'll be great jobs at the end of those college pathways, and we'll be doing our part to fulfill the skills gap that Texas is suffering. And I'll bet you'll hear some about that here before this hearing is over. So the challenge is that those customers, the industrial employers of Texas, have come to us over the past year or two and said, we love you guys, but we need you to ramp up your output. Well, what stands in between our ability to produce more placements is capital project funding, because our 10 campuses, in most cases, are full. The legislature was generous in giving us some CCAP funding last year, but that will be a one-time solution. And it will build buildings, and our capacity will go up, and we'll place more students. There's no doubt about it. But what we have is a situation in which, if we were a community college, we would levy property taxes, and those annual revenues would be a basis for capital projects. We don't levy property taxes. If we were a university, we would have various endowment funds that pay us, and we also have donors who could easily write a check for $10, $20, $50 million. And so building project money at that level is well covered. TSTC falls in a shadow in the middle. We don't have any of that capacity. The bit of infrastructure funding we do have is literally capped at a disproportionately small level. So we have campuses that are filled to the gills with students studying for the great jobs that are out there, but we can't take another body because we need more space to do this big industrial training that we do. And so This joint resolution imagines a one-time solution to an enduring problem. It's a single fix that will take care of this matter from now on. And so with that, I ask for I open myself up to any questions that you may have.
I think we'll go through the whole panel. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Creighton and committee members. I am Tony Bennett, President and CEO of the Texas Association of Manufacturers, testifying in strong support of SJR 81, and want to thank Senator Birdwell for his work on helping us with the bill. Texas manufacturers employ more than 881,000 workers, earning an average of over $90,000 a year. TAM advocates for over 600 member companies across every region of our state, including many of Texas's largest industry employers. For every manufacturing job that we can create, that spins off an average of 5 additional jobs in our economy, and Texas remains the #1 exporting state for manufactured goods in the U.S. for now 21 years running. TAM believes it is increasingly clear that the state of Texas must make strategic investments to keep pace with the growing workforce needs of manufacturers and other industry employers. We already face historically low unemployment rates and continue to see a widening skills gap among available talent. Texas is already home to some of the largest and most advanced manufacturing companies in the world, and if we want the state to remain attractive for new investments and expansions, we need to ensure a steady pipeline of world-class technical talent that are ready to design, build, operate, and maintain these manufacturing facilities. Manufacturers and other business employers require a constant pipeline of highly specialized workers at all levels, particularly in the skilled trades. Texas State Technical College is a proven partner, driven by their outcomes-based funding formula, which pays TSTC only when their graduates land a job. It's estimated that there are more than 60,000 open manufacturing jobs in the state of Texas and more than 1 million job openings overall in our state beyond just manufacturing. Our skills gap's real, it's widening, and Texas employers desperately need more proven talent from our TSTC system campuses. TAM started a dialogue with TST in the fall of 2022, which focused on the high growth regions of the state and basically overlaid that map with the industrial locations of most of our TAM member company sectors. This endowment idea then arose from conversations between TSTC and industry to explore potential options. Unlike Texas community college districts, the TSTC system does not have local property tax levy authority. So when TSTC needs finances to grow and expand and meet the state's workforce needs, they must ask the legislature for these funds each and every legislative session. A permanent endowment fund for the TSTC system is crucial to keep up with the sophisticated needs of Texas industries. TAM member companies are hopeful the legislature will answer this incredible need, particularly while our state has record funds available to provide such a needed investment. Please support SJR 81. Thousands of young Texas high school and college students, as well as our returning veterans, desperately need this opportunity to start their promising careers. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tony. Go ahead, Annie.
Good afternoon. My name is Annie Spillman, and I'm here in support of SJR 81. I'm here on behalf of NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business. We represent small business owners across the state of Texas. We've got about 22,000 small business owners, and we represent various industries, truly representing the economic sectors of our state, from manufacturing to construction to wholesale industries, services. The one interesting thing about NFIB is that we are a member-governed organization and that we do ballot our members, and we produce SBET reports and jobs reports frequently. And the most frequent jobs report came out, and 60% of our members right now have positions that they cannot fill. And of those 60%, and 90% of them cannot fill them because they don't have anybody that have the skills that can fill those positions. And that's a large percentage. They frankly can't even get bodies in the chair, but 90% of those is because they don't have the skills. TSTC has been a proven partner, and they're good at their jobs. And to be frank, the small business owners, generally the training lies on their backs. And, we're generally having to compete with the larger corporations, or I like to say, quote unquote, the Walmarts of the world. The small business owners invest their time and their money in the people that they employ and their workers. They train them, and they spend a lot of time doing that, and then ultimately they're hired away. Competition is hard, and so then those positions lie open again. So we need to have these facilities that are going to produce these kids, young adults that can come out and fill these positions, and it's not just on the backs of these small business owners that are having to train these people as they're working, only to then ultimately lose them. But, these business owners are willing to invest in these people, ultimately build them up to run their companies. And so it's a cyclical, it's a rewarding thing. It helps the morale. And our small business owners, they account for 99.8% of all of our businesses in the state and employ 5 million workers. So let's keep them open by being able to fill those positions and taking care of the people that help us by doing that. And we are here because we truly believe in what they're doing, and so we hope we can get this SJR passed, and we're here to be a resource as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Maroney on behalf of the Texas Association of Manufacturers and BASF Corporation, and here in strong support of SJR 81. Thank you, Senator Birdwell, for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your support and as a co-author. And so what you're being passed out is a one-pager. And one of my other kind of jobs, I come and speak to you guys a lot on higher ed policy and workforce development. And one of the things I get to do is try to help organize and quarterback a larger coalition of employers. And this is, TSTC is a big part of what we advocate for. And I'll just share here that the trade associations and companies and think tanks that are and chambers of commerce that are on this page are all in strong support of this endowment idea. There's one thing that I can say that is a complaint about TSTC. They're too small. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough graduates coming out of their campuses. We don't have enough campus expansions, and we don't have enough campuses. That's the only rub against TSTC, because their quality is amazing. The students they produce are proven, and it's their funding model, and it's been talked about a couple of times here today, is the return value formula, which is based upon their graduates' income over a 5-year period. And what does that do for the TSTC system? That means that they're laser focused on quality, and they're laser focused on placement. Mm-hmm. It's the true outcomes that we all want as a state. Mm-hmm. Your return on investment is outstanding. Our return on investment as employers is outstanding. And guess who also's return on investment is outstanding? And that's the students. So it's a win-win-win for the state, for the employers, for students. And so this is an endowment idea, a fund that can be a strategic investment for years, that can pay dividends for many years, can spin off money, can spin off funds yearly to keep up with the demands of industry for campus growth, for more graduates, for more campuses. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Appreciate each of you. Chancellor, appreciate your testimony leading off. It's a historic day and the next step on big plans, and with the policy, with the SJR that Chairman Birdwell is advancing, and certainly with what we see in the budget. it's exciting. So, and you've got many friends, it looks like, supporting you here. So
Thank you, Mr.
just
Chairman.
very happy about it and very pleased with Senator Birdwell's leadership on it. Recognize Senator Birdwell.
Just let me close with a thought, Mr. Chairman. I love this university system because they earn it every day. And about 5-6 years ago, I was driving through Waco, speeding through Waco, but driving through Waco, and saw a sign for TSTC that said, if you are a TSTC graduate, if we don't place you in a position in 6 months, we will refund your tuition. No other system makes that promise. And and let me give this, it's not a caveat, but that was I think it was 5 years ago, Chancellor, maybe 6?
Yes, sir.
Maybe 6. The demand on TSTC is getting larger, but the footprint is still the same. And so it's pretty easy to make that promise now, 6 years later, because the numbers of demands for TST graduates, they've only had one person that they had to refund. This SJR will give TSTC the ability to grow and still keep that promise to the state of Texas. And I'm confident the Board of Regents will make sure that they're good stewards of those dollars that this committee and this legislature will afford them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I am as well. Thank you. Well said. Thank you, each of you. Appreciate you. Okay, the chair calls Aaron Valdez. Ms. Valdez, I think you're the last witness registered on SJR 81.
Great. Thank you for having me. Chairman Creighton, I am delighted to be here today. My name is Erin Davis Valdez, and I'm an Education Policy Director at Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I'm here to voice our strong support of SJR 81. So our history on this goes way back. Our foundation's public amplification of Texas State Technical College's unique returned value funding model goes all the way back to 2012 as it was being phased in. Dr. Thomas Lindsay, whom you heard from earlier today, wrote in National Review Online, "One is hard put to imagine an arrangement better suited to providing the accountability to which taxpayers are entitled." Dr. Lindsay's confidence in the outcome of this unprecedented gamble was well-founded because it was based in human nature. So I believe we have an opportunity before us today, more than a decade after Dr. Lindsay wrote those words, to expand this now time-tested arrangement. We believe in the power of incentives, and that's what TSTC is based on. It teaches us that when an organization's mission is aligned with its incentives, the new ways of solving problems emerge. Whether the mission is workforce readiness or academic preparation or both, institutions thrive when their results must be validated by the real world. TSTC doesn't levy property taxes, as you heard. Each session, legislators are seeking out new TSTC campuses in their communities because their constituents and their businesses demand it. This session alone, legislators from both sides of the aisle have sponsored 9 bills to bring TSTC to their communities. As this committee knows, and as the legislature has acknowledged in the K-12 context, career and technical education, especially programs focused on manufacturing, construction, and transportation, they're more expensive to offer because of the equipment and space requirements. As you've already heard, our state has big needs for individuals with skills in these trades, including information technology. And because these sectors are rapidly changing, without tight alignment with the skills demanded by employers, public institutions risk wasting students' precious time and money and taxpayer resources on already outdated training. One example of how TSTC is responsive to employers is through its partnership with the Federation for Advanced Manufacturing in Education. Thanks to the provisions of HB 4361 passed in 2021, earlier this year, TSTC was able to kick off an Earn While You Learn program in Seguin. FAME's track record of success is remarkable. Research conducted by Opportunity America and the Brookings Institution in October 2020 revealed that when comparing the wages of students who completed FAME's employer-driven program with students who completed a non-FAME program, the average earnings for FAME graduates 5 years after completion was $96,000 compared with $36,000 for non-FAME participants. The Foundation's recent research has shown that high school career and technical education programs across the state do not show strong alignment with workforce demand, especially in the high-wage, high-demand fields like construction, transportation, and manufacturing, and information technology. As an example, 84% of students do not have access to programs of study in diesel and heavy equipment, and only one student in the whole state completed a program of study in 2020 in this area, according to data from the TEA. This is despite over 2,100 annual openings for roles like truck mechanics, auto body repairers, and diesel engine specialists, and a median wage between $42,000 and $67,000 a year. But there's another kind of alignment that matters even more to us, the alignment of opportunities with the unique abilities and interests of students. Our research shows that about 23% of the class of 2019 was neither in the workforce nor in any form of higher education 6 months after graduation. It's disturbing. And we think that this has hit young men especially hard. There are some recent books out from both sides of the aisle pointing to the lack of engagement of young men in workforce and education, and we've provided some of those stats for you today. Dual credit programs have the potential to supplement these opportunities available to secondary students, and we believe that expanding TSTC's campuses across the state is exactly the kind of thing that could offer these pathways to prosperity and meaning that young people are needing now more than ever. And so that's why we support this SJR, and we ask for your support as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate it, Ms. Valdez. Thanks for providing your published work in the American Enterprise Institute, right?
Yes, sir. They requested that we write this up. There were other states who were interested in TSTC's funding model because it's unique and no other states use it. And so we had the opportunity to do a deep dive into the funding model and detail it here in this report.
It's a deep dive, for sure.
Yes.
Appreciate how granular it is. It's helpful to us, and certainly will be to Chairman Birdwell as he sort of presents the upside of this scaled model further. And just appreciate your references to true institutional diversity as well in the article, because what TSTC produces for the dollar for dollar investment is incredible. Now we'll get to see it scale. That's exciting.
Yes, sir.
Thanks
We
for
agree.
being here.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, is anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against SJR 81? Just resource witnesses here, so that will conclude public testimony for SJR 81. The chair will close public testimony at this time, and SJR 81 will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. With that, Senator King, thank you for helping us fly the plane today, and appreciate all the witnesses and everyone in the audience and stakeholders that came in person or watched on simulcast. At this time, the Subcommittee on Higher Education will stand in recess, subject to the call of the chair.